shared my sentiments. And the team realized it. She must have said something to the team, because another time we were at a football game and people started calling us names. And we were together as a team. There were probably about 5 of us in a car. And so white and black players. And they just dove on me like, get Bernoulli first. She says something, gets us all killed, because there's thousands of people at a football game. You know, we're driving through in a car. And so, you know, the funny thing is, I don't think any of us were really equipped to deal with the level of racism that we experienced. And our teammates saw us experience it. And you care about your teammates. And I didn't experience any of it from within the team. And we started calling each other, you know, negative slang terms, but we reversed them. So we called the white girls some of the negative black terms, and they did the reverse. And so the coach came in one day and heard us doing this in the locker room. It was our way of dealing with what we were experiencing. And she didn't know how to handle it. So she kept going and ran into her office, and the assistant coach, who had grown up in New York, both were white, came out and explained how that wasn't appropriate and how it was demeaning and why were we doing it. And we had a discussion about it. And she told us that was enough. But, you know, we learned there were so many questions from me going to basketball camp to also being in the locker room. They wanted to have a food fight. And I said, you can't throw food in black women's hair. And they're like, Monique, you wash yours often. I said, I do, but my teammates don't. And then when we were in, I remember being in basketball camp when I was one of the few African Americans, predominantly white camp. And I didn't roll my hair at night, but my black roommate did, who was also my teammate. And they were asking, why do you use rollers? Some of them use rollers, and some, you know, it's just funny the discussions that you have, but they were brave spaces and we felt comfortable having them. And I'm glad that we had the opportunity to have discussions and learn from one another. And so fast forward, I go to Michigan. I realized that although I'll get a great education and it'll look good that I graduate from Michigan, it's just not a good fit for me. So in Ann Arbor, so I transferred to another branch. I go back home. I commute to Michigan, University of Michigan, Dearborn. And I realized that staying home is also not a good fit, because I'm independent. I want to be away. So my sister was at Spelman, younger but smarter. And so I started looking at schools, and I started looking at schools in Atlanta and a number of other schools, and decided to transfer there, not knowing the breadth of what Spelman could offer, or the unbelievable reputation that it has continued to grow. And so I went to Spelman, and it was, you know, it was a port in a storm, because I was so accustomed to being mistreated. I got mistreated in class by a TA when I was at Michigan. And a TA wrote notes on my paper that I was racist, and I hadn't put any of my opinion in this paper. And I knew she felt that I was different because of the way she did or did not respond. We had a history class, and I mean, we were in a large auditorium. There were at least probably 500 people in this class. It was huge. So we had TAs that broke the class into smaller numbers, and we read 6 books. And I would raise my hand on 5 of the books, and she never acknowledged me. And there was probably only 20 of us in the class. And we're learning from one another, because there were some people that had never seen black people, and some people had grown up in very affluent surroundings. And so I remember thinking when we went home Thanksgiving how everyone was different, because we've been exposed to each other and learned from one another. But working with her was a challenge, and there was an African American senior that came up to me that was in the class, and he said, we have the same TA. What'd you get on your last paper? And I said, I got a D. And he said, do you think you deserved it? I said, absolutely not. And as a freshman, I'm trying to figure it all out. He said, I received the same grade. I think she's treating us different because of our race. Here's what I'm going to do that I recommend you do. Go meet with her one-on-one. Tell her you don't think you deserved your grade. You want her to regrade it, or you're going to go to the professor. So I remember knocking on her residence hall door, and she opened the door and started shaking. And I realized now she probably thought I was going to attack her. I don't think I could articulate what was going on at the time. And she asked me what grade I thought I deserved. And I said, well, that's for you to decide. I just know that it's not a D. So she regraded it. I think I got a B. I told her my opinion wasn't in the paper. Fast forward, she doesn't call on me in class until we get to the 6th book. I don't raise my hand, but she calls on me. And the book was an autobiography of Malcolm X. And I asked her, I said, you haven't called on me the entire class. And my classmates were trying to get her to acknowledge my hand throughout the process. And I said, yet you ask me now what my opinion is. I don't have one that I'm willing to share. So some of those, at the time, it was just difficult. It was, hard life for me in comparison to what. But I can say that to myself now. But I think it helped to mold me, to make me understand that education is a necessary entity. So I transferred to Spelman. It was a good place to land because it was great for my self-esteem, and you're surrounded by people that expect success. So I had professors that were different backgrounds in terms of their racial demographic, but all of them expected one thing: success. And so it wasn't the look to your left, look to the right, one of you aren't going to be here. It was look to your left, look to the right, everyone's graduating. And so that was the expectation. They would call you out in class. Ms. Bernuti, where's your lab report? It's like, wow, this is embarrassing. But their expectation was you're going to succeed, whatever it takes. We're going to dig in to try to help you do that. And so that piece was good for me. It was a small environment, and I tend to do well in either environment, but I'm okay in large environments where you have to reach out for what you need. And so 2 years at Spelman was good. I graduated from Spelman, started looking at grad schools. I was a much better student the last 2 years than I had been throughout my career. And so, I ended up at Northern. I looked at the number. I actually got rejected from a number of schools. I remember getting the mail, and I was like, I'm not opening this envelope today. It's too thin. My sister said, what do you mean? I said, when it's thin, they're rejecting you. If they're going to accept you, they're going to send you more information. So she opened the mail some days for me. I just couldn't take the rejection. And then Northern accepted me. And I came down and looked at Northern. I think I had a friend at the time that was here. And I remember meeting two people that I stayed in touch with throughout my career at Northern until they retired. And it was Dr. Eddie Williams, who was our CFO, so he was in charge of finances for the university. And at Masu Zike, Dr. Masu Zike, who was the director of the Center for Black Studies. So they convinced me that there was, a good education, a good fit. I'd have a graduate assistantship, which was helpful because I didn't want to go into major debt for grad school. And my parents had helped, both my sister and I, who went to school together. I don't know how they did it, but they helped us financially. So we were both going to grad school, but both trying to figure out how to do it on our own because we needed to.
This is the business school? Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, I'm sorry. Good question. So at the time I was in the MAPA program, so Masters of Public Administration. And I got 3/4 of the way through the program. Actually, probably more than that. I think I had 2 classes left. And I realized I was working at the time. My part of the responsibility for my graduate assistantship was actually working with the organization that is responsible for public administrators and city managers, really, across the state of Illinois. And I realized that the state of Illinois hires a number of city managers from Northern Illinois University's program, which is a great program. But I didn't want to be a city manager. And I hadn't met any females or any females of color who were city managers. As I'm, engaged in this conference and meeting these city managers, and I thought, I don't see any that look like me. I don't think this is what I want to do, because I thought, politics are a challenge. I didn't realize there's probably more politics in education. But I know at the time, sometimes being naive is great. Mm-hmm. And so I talked to a friend of mine that was here, that was working here, and he said, you should look at the College of Education's program. I think it's a better fit for you, because I was telling him that I'm close to graduation, but it's not what I think I want to do. At the time, they weren't, public administration wasn't really training you to work with non-for-profits like they are now. I probably would have gone that route, But fortunately, they weren't doing that at the time. It wasn't a real push and emphasis. So I looked at the college of education. I agreed it was a good program, so I switched to that program, but it meant I was going to have more classes that I needed to take. So in the midst of being a grad student, the first year I was a grad student, and then I was kind of tired of school, to be honest, but I kept trying to push through, which I understand why people take breaks. I support them if they're just burnt out, because I did not, and it was reflected in my grades. I applied for a job in the Office of Admissions on a dare from one of my friends. They said, you'd be great at this, but you're not going to do it. I'm competitive. They knew if they